On October 3, 2025, just days before his self-declared deadline, Donald Trump made an announcement that stunned the world. After weeks of back-channel talks and rising global tension, he received something no US president had achieved in decades: a conditional acceptance from a military opposition group for a sweeping peace proposal. Within hours, Trump appeared in a video address from the Oval Office, a statement that quickly spread worldwide, amassing millions of views and igniting fierce debate across governments and media outlets. But questions immediately followed. What exactly had Hamas agreed to? Why had Trump demanded that Israel halt its airstrikes so suddenly? And what did this unexpected moment of diplomacy have to do with an ancient prophecy written more than 2 millennia ago? What unfolded next would leave the world divided between disbelief and hope. To understand the weight of this moment, it helps to look at the storm that led here. By October 2025, the Israel-Hamas conflict had entered its second year since the attacks of October 7, 2023. More than 50,000 lives had been lost, millions driven from their homes, and tensions between Iran, Turkey, and Israel had brought the entire region to the edge of a larger war, one that could draw in Russia and beyond. On September 29th, Trump revealed a 20-point roadmap for peace, the boldest plan ever proposed for the Middle East. It called for an immediate ceasefire, a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, the disarmament of all militant factions, and the creation of a massive reconstruction program supervised by an international peace board, personally chaired by Trump himself. But what truly set this plan apart wasn't its ambition, it was the deadline. Hamas had 72 hours to decide. No drawn-out negotiations, no endless diplomatic back and forth. Except by October 5th, or face what Trump described as all hell breaking loose, with full American backing for Israel's military to finish the fight once and for all. The world watched in suspense. Would Hamas lay down its weapons and relinquish control? Or would they reject the plan and risk a devastating new offensive from Israel? Then, 2 days before the deadline, they finally responded. In a 6-paragraph statement that startled diplomats everywhere, Hamas gave what analysts called a conditional yes. They agreed to release every remaining Israeli hostage, transfer governance to a neutral Palestinian council of experts, and initiate an immediate ceasefire. Yet, they refused several crucial points: complete disarmament, Trump's personal oversight of reconstruction, and the separation of Gaza's future from the broader Palestinian issue. It was a yes, but answer, one that left the world on edge. For the first time in 5 years, Hamas had publicly accepted parts of US-led peace framework. For the first time, they had agreed to a full release of hostages. And for the first time, they had openly considered surrendering control of Gaza's government. In that moment, history shifted. Whether it marked the dawn of peace or the calm before another storm was still unknown, but what happened that day would echo far beyond politics, hinting at something older, deeper, and perhaps even prophetic. As the final hours of Trump's deadline ticked away, the tension was unlike anything the modern world had seen. Every major network carried breaking updates. Financial markets swung wildly. Commentators speculated about peace, prophecy, and power all at once. Some wondered if this moment might mirror ancient warnings, the kind that spoke of a peace that comes just before the storm. Then Trump appeared. Sitting behind the resolute desk, a large map of Gaza's withdrawal zones laid out behind him, he addressed the world in a calm yet commanding tone. It was a message that would immediately divide opinion, hailed by some as historic genius, and condemned by others as reckless or even prophetic in the most ominous sense. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began. "Today is a big day for the Middle East, for Israel, for the families of the hostages, and really for the world." Right from the start, he widened the lens. This wasn't just about Gaza. It was about reshaping the global order. "Based on what I've heard," he continued, "I believe they're ready for a lasting peace." He then confirmed what many had only hoped for. Hamas, he said, had agreed to release all remaining hostages, around 20 survivors, and the bodies of 28 others. It was an extraordinary admission. But moments later, Trump said something that silenced even his supporters. "Israel," he declared, You've been strong, you've been fearless, but it's time to stop the bombing in Gaza right now. It's too dangerous to get the hostages out while the strikes continue. It was the first time since the conflict began in 2023 that an American president had publicly urged Israel to halt its offensive. The statement marked a turning point, one that placed the recovery of hostages above the military campaign itself. Trump went on to list the nations now involved in mediation: Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Jordan. Everyone, he said, is united at the United Nations and beyond in wanting this war to end. And then came the phrase that rippled across the world. This isn't just about Gaza, it's about the entire Middle East coming together. Eternal peace. No more fighting. Rebuilding stronger than ever. Eternal peace. Those two words, eternal peace, immediately set off waves of speculation among those who study biblical prophecy. To some, it sounded like a promise of hope. To others, it echoed warnings that stretch back thousands of years of a false peace, one that would precede the darkest deception in human history. Students of prophecy pointed to one verse in particular, Daniel 9:27, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate." To those familiar with this passage, Trump's words felt eerily familiar. A covenant confirmed with many, a global promise of peace, and a world standing at the edge of something it might not yet understand. The final line of Daniel's prophecy reads, "And that which is decreed shall be poured upon the desolate." It's the closing note of what scholars call the prophecy of the 70 weeks, one of the most intricate and astonishing predictions in all of Scripture. To see why Trump's peace announcement carries such deep symbolic weight, we need to revisit what Daniel actually foresaw. In the original Hebrew, the word translated as confirm is gabar. It doesn't mean to create something new, but to strengthen or reinforce something already in place. In other words, Daniel described a leader who would take existing agreements and make them stronger, broader, and more binding. The word for covenant, berith, refers to a lasting, formal alliance, one meant to establish enduring relationships between nations or groups. Daniel wasn't describing a brief truce or a fragile ceasefire. He was foretelling a structural transformation of alliances and agreements spanning multiple powers, reshaping the region itself. The Hebrew term rabbim, meaning many, emphasizes that this covenant wouldn't be between just two parties, but among numerous nations, all participating in a single framework of peace. Now look at the reality unfolding today. Trump's peace framework involves a web of actors: the United States providing guarantees and oversight, Israel agreeing to pull back and limit its strikes, Hamas handing over weapons and control, Egypt and Qatar serving as mediators, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Jordan offering regional legitimacy, and the European Union ready to fund reconstruction. Add the United Nations for international recognition, and suddenly Daniel's many becomes a tangible picture: at least 8 major players, with dozens of smaller stakeholders orbiting around them. But here's the striking part. Trump has placed himself not merely as a negotiator among equals, but as the coordinator, the one at the center of it all. Daniel's prophecy spoke of someone who would not only confirm the covenant but oversee it, guiding its unfolding. The text also mentions that this covenant will last 1 week, a prophetic symbol often representing 7 years. Trump has not specified such a timeline, but the very scale of his plan makes a long-term process unavoidable. His proposal calls for the full reconstruction of Gaza's infrastructure, the creation of a new governing system, the formation of economic zones and trade routes, normalization deals between Israel and Arab nations, and regional security guarantees designed to prevent future wars. Experts in post-conflict reconstruction note that rebuilding efforts of this magnitude typically take anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So a 7-year cycle isn't just biblically symbolic, it's logistically realistic. The transformation he envisions, a Middle East shifting from conflict to cooperation, would require nothing less than a decade of sustained coordination and control. And yet, the prophecy goes deeper still. Daniel describes that in the midst of this 7-year period, sacrifices and offerings will cease. That presumes that such rituals have been restored, that a functioning temple once again stands in Jerusalem. For nearly 2 millennia, this seemed unimaginable. But today, that once distant idea feels far closer than ever. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has already recreated every sacred vessel, garment, and ritual object required for temple worship. The groundwork has been laid. The pieces that once seemed scattered through history are aligning again, and what was written in Daniel's vision may now echo in modern headlines. The last obstacle standing between prophecy and reality might not be construction or funding its political approval. For years, one question has loomed. Would any global leader ever broker an agreement that grants shared access to the Temple Mount? Some now wonder if Trump's sweeping peace framework could be that very opening. Could his call for international oversight pave the way for both Muslim worship at existing holy sites and a future Jewish temple nearby? Not long ago, such an idea would have been dismissed as fantasy. But recent remarks from Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman have stirred new discussion. He suggested that Arab nations might one day accept the rebuilding of a Jewish temple if it came in exchange for full Palestinian statehood and lasting regional peace. What once seemed unthinkable may now be quietly moving within reach. Observers also noticed something intriguing in Trump's broadcast. The map displayed behind him, his proposed withdrawal plan, was far more detailed than any previous peace outline. It showed layers of territorial phases, zones of control, and sections apparently marked for different administrative or religious purposes. Some analysts believe the blurred area near Jerusalem might even include provisions connected to the Temple Mount itself. If that's true, the implications are enormous. It would mean that Trump's proposal doesn't just aim to end war, but could create the political framework for renewed worship, exactly the condition Daniel's prophecy described, where sacrificial offerings resume under a confirmed covenant. What makes this moment especially remarkable is how unified the world suddenly seems. In his speech, Trump emphasized that everyone was united at the and beyond, wanting this war to end. For decades, peace efforts in the Middle East have collapsed under divisions. Arab nations rejecting pro-Israel plans, European leaders opposing US dominance, Russia and China blocking resolutions at the UN. But this time, something has changed. Governments that were once rivals are cautiously aligning around the same proposal. Even traditional enemies appear ready to cooperate under Trump's structure. For many who study prophecy, this unity carries an eerie echo. The book of Daniel describes a figure who shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and by peace shall destroy many. A leader whose power grows not through violence, but through diplomacy, who wins hearts with promises of peace, only to unleash a greater reckoning. Could this be that moment? Could the world be witnessing the start of the 7 years Daniel foresaw, the covenant that marks the final chapter before Christ's return? No one can say for certain. But whether this is the prophecy itself or a striking rehearsal for it, one thing is clear. History is converging with Scripture in ways that demand attention. For believers, this isn't a call to fear, but to watch, pray, and stay ready, because whatever unfolds next may carry eternal significance. There's another layer to all this, one that reaches deep into the New Testament's warnings about the final days. Paul the Apostle wrote a verse that feels almost tailor-made for the language being used right now. In his first letter to the Thessalonians, he said, "When they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape." Now think back to Trump's own words. Eternal peace. No more fighting. One of the greatest days in civilization's history. The very phrase peace and safety, the one Paul said would signal sudden upheaval, was repeated across every headline and broadcast. To many who study prophecy, that's no coincidence. To really grasp why this moment matters, we have to return to what Paul was addressing. He wrote to the church in Thessalonica around the year 51 AD, responding to their confusion about the return of Christ and the coming day of the Lord. Just a few verses earlier, he reminded them, "You yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord comes as a thief in the night." His message was clear. deception will spread in the final generation. The world will think peace has been secured right before destruction breaks out with no warning. Paul wasn't warning against ordinary false hopes or political optimism. He was describing a specific moment in history, a global illusion of security just before divine judgment. In Greek, the word he used for destruction is orthos, meaning total ruin, devastation, or complete annihilation. Not a temporary crisis, but a sudden collapse from which there is no human escape. And Paul chose his metaphor carefully, as labor pains upon a woman with child. Anyone who's witnessed childbirth understands what that means. Labor doesn't start gently or gradually. It comes suddenly, powerfully, and once it begins, there's no turning back. The process must reach its conclusion. That's the pattern Paul describes for the end of days. Once it starts, it cannot be stopped. When the world's leaders declare peace and safety, that's when events accelerate beyond human control. No treaty, no negotiation, no alliance will be able to halt what follows. Now look again at the timing of Trump's declaration. He announced peace while the war itself had not yet truly ended. Bombings were still shaking the region, and lives were still being lost. Yet the world applauded and echoed his words, peace and safety. It's in that contradiction between human optimism and divine warning that prophecy watchers see something stirring. The message from Thessalonians is not simply about politics, it's about patterns. When humanity proclaims security in the midst of turmoil, Scripture warns that the real shaking may only be beginning. The United States had entered its fourth day of government paralysis. 800,000 federal employees were without pay, $26 billion in funding locked away, and the entire system grinding to a halt. Commentators called it one of the worst displays of political dysfunction since the Civil War. And while the nation's own infrastructure was cracking from within, its leader was promising to rebuild the Middle East and secure the world's peace. It was a strange contrast, pledging stability abroad while instability deepened at home. The markets immediately reacted. Stocks plunged over 1.5% on the very first day of the shutdown. Major defense contractors began pausing operations, a move that could directly undermine America's ability to deliver the unlimited backing Trump had promised to Israel. To many believers, the scene looked eerily familiar. The Apostle Paul's warning about false peace fit neatly into a much larger prophetic pattern that Jesus himself outlined in Matthew 24. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see that you are not troubled. For these things must happen, but the end is not yet. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Jesus described not a single event, but a sequence, a chain reaction. First conflict, then division among nations, then waves of crisis spreading across the earth. Many prophecy watchers now see that pattern unfolding with remarkable precision. The Gaza conflict as the wars and rumors of wars, followed by political chaos and economic upheaval across the nations. But beneath all this, there's a deeper battle, one most of the world overlooks. Paul revealed it in Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, the rulers of the darkness of this world, and spiritual wickedness in high places. The deception he warned about wasn't just political maneuvering or economic control, it was spiritual manipulation. Throughout history, the same unseen forces have worked to twist human ambitions into instruments of chaos. Evil rarely arrives wearing its true face. It often disguises itself as order, peace, or compassion. Humanitarian unity, international aid, global cooperation on the surface, these look noble, even godly. But what if the world's most well-intentioned efforts are quietly laying the groundwork for the greatest deception ever known? A system that appears to promise security, yet ultimately leads humanity away from truth. Paul followed his peace and safety warning with a vital reminder in the very next verse. But you, brothers, are not in darkness, that the day should overtake you as a thief. In other words, those who are spiritually awake, who stay rooted in Scripture, watchful in prayer, and discerning in spirit will not be caught off guard. This moment in history, filled with both chaos and calm, might be more than politics. It could be the unveiling of a spiritual pattern, one that reminds every believer to stay awake, stay grounded, and never mistake temporary peace for eternal security. Those who truly understand Scripture should recognize what's unfolding, not through panic, but through discernment. The Bible teaches that believers must be able to read the signs of the times, to see the difference between genuine peace and the illusion of it. The sobering question now is this: are we being drawn into the same false sense of security that the rest of the world will one day fall for? Are we celebrating diplomacy while overlooking prophecy? Are we so eager for relief that we've stopped asking whether what seems good might actually be part of a greater deception? Could this global celebration of peace be the very warning sign Scripture spoke of, a calm before the greatest storm in human history? Even if Trump's peace initiative is not the fulfillment of Paul's prophecy in 1 Thessalonians 5:3, it feels unmistakably like a rehearsal for it. Either way, the message for believers remains the same: stay awake, stay prayerful, and prepare for what's coming. Paul's warning ends with words that should shake every complacent heart: and they shall not escape. When that final deception takes hold, when false peace gives way to chaos, when destruction comes suddenly, there will be no escape for those who trusted in human power instead of God's protection. But this story doesn't end with one man's speech or one nation's plan. It's part of something much larger unfolding across the world. Just as Trump's message was making headlines, the United Kingdom announced the launch of its mandatory digital ID system, a development prophecy watchers see as a potential step toward the kind of global control described in Revelation 13. Under this system, every citizen will need a verified digital identity by 2029 to access jobs, banking, healthcare, and basic services. Everything will run through a single smartphone-based system linking financial activity, employment, and social participation under one centralized network. It's being praised as efficient and secure, but for many Christians, it echoes the prophetic words: He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no one may buy or sell except the one who has the mark. Global leaders are calling this a window of opportunity. The United Nations supports it, European governments are cautiously optimistic, and even former adversaries in the Middle East are expressing interest in cooperating under shared digital frameworks. This growing unity, nations aligning around centralized systems of control, feels eerily similar to the kind of world order the book of Revelation warns will precede the rise of the final deception. And look at how perfectly Trump's peace proposal fits into that pattern. Step by step, it builds the kind of dependency and structure that could enable such control. First, a comprehensive peace deal creates international reliance on American aid and supervision. Second, digital systems manage and monitor resource distribution for accountability. Third, a central governing board decides who qualifies for that assistance and who doesn't. And finally, economic participation itself becomes tied to compliance with global oversight, exactly the mechanism Revelation described, where access to trade and survival depends on obedience to a central authority. It's a chilling yet fascinating pattern, a world seeking peace, but walking straight into the structure that makes prophetic warnings possible. Whether these events are the direct fulfillment or just the shadow of what's to come, one thing is certain: the stage is being set, and every believer should be paying attention. Phase 5 paints a chilling picture of what may come next. The same digital systems created for reconstruction and humanitarian aid could easily evolve into the backbone of global economic control. This isn't wild speculation, it's simply the logical outcome of centralized digital governance disguised as progress. While America faces internal collapse, international leadership is shifting elsewhere. As digital ID programs expand and global aid becomes more tightly regulated, the framework for total control is quietly forming. Never before have so many biblical warnings aligned so perfectly with real-world systems, technologies built for convenience that could one day be used for domination. Revelation 13 describes it clearly. And the whole world marveled and followed the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? and who can make war against him. The world won't follow him because he's openly evil, but because he appears powerful, efficient, and successful. So what are we witnessing? A breakthrough for peace or the foundation of the final deception? Global unity, digital economies, and centralized authority are merging under the banner of security and humanitarian progress. The systems that promise freedom may soon define control. Whether this is the rise of the Revelation 13 world order or a dress rehearsal for it, the warning remains the same. Jesus said in Luke 21:36, "Watch therefore and pray always, that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things." We're not told to predict the moment, only to stay awake when the signs appear. Jesus never told his followers to predict exact identities or timelines. He told them to watch and pray to stay spiritually awake and keep an eternal perspective amid temporary events. Trump's response to Hamas might seem like the peace the world has long desired. It could bring hostages home and bring calm to Gaza. It might even usher in a rare season of cooperation in the Middle East. But it could also signal something far deeper, the first steps of the prophetic sequence that leads to Christ's return. Whether this moment fulfills Daniel's covenant in 9:27 or mirrors Paul's warning in 1 Thessalonians, the responsibility for believers remains unchanged. Be ready for whatever God is allowing to unfold in our time. Ancient prophecies are echoing through modern events. Nations are aligning, technology is advancing, and global unity is forming in ways no previous generation has witnessed. The signs are no longer distant, they're visible. So stay aware, but stay rooted in Scripture. Watch what's happening in the world, but view it through the eyes of faith. Prepare practically, yes, but prepare spiritually most of all. Because whether this peace plan brings real stability or proves to be the calm before deception, one truth remains certain: the King is coming. His kingdom is being prepared even now, and every believer is called to stand firm and take part in God's unfolding plan. The question is, do we recognize this as true peace or the beginning of the great deception the Bible warns will mislead even the faithful?